Hey everyone, it's Gavin Vengeance and welcome back to MyXP. Today I want to talk to you about Final Fantasy X. Game that when I first got it, I thought was one of the best games I ever played in my life. I'll get right to it that, Final Fantasy X for me was just like, wow, I can't believe games can get this good and look this good. I remember, first hearing about it as soon as I started reading up about like the PlayStation 2 and its initial launch, and of course at that point I was like, I have to have it. So I begged my parents to get me a PlayStation 2 for Christmas that year, and lo and behold, they ended up getting me the PlayStation 2. But the first game I got with it was Dark Cloud, and I can talk about that in another video. But Final Fantasy X was the one that I was really looking forward to for the PlayStation 2, and as soon as it came out, I had it. So I started playing Final Fantasy X, and going through the very first opening cutscene, where you're in Xanarkand, and you get to meet Tidus for the first time. I was like, okay, this looks like it's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to see how this plays. The battle system was still turn-based, so I was like, awesome. But I remember, like first playing it and getting that opening cutscene, just being in complete awe at how stunning the CGI had come at that point. And there was voiceovers, which I wasn't too sure about at the time, but I thought it was cool because I didn't have to do as much reading at that point, even though, they did have the subtitles and everything there. But it was really cool to actually hear the character's voice for the first time. And you kind of had to make sure that your character's name was still Tidus. If not, it was just weird. And I found it didn't really fit if you named your character anything other than Tidus. But I do remember that when I first played the game, I did end up naming my character Gavin because, every single time I play Final Fantasy, I got to name the main character myself. At least I did back then. Now it's always, whatever character name was set, then that's how it's saying. But I remember, seeing the Blitzball scene and hearing the heavy metal music at the time that, I wasn't really a fan of. And, you first hear that as like, another world kicks in, right? It's like, don't you give up on it. I was like, what is this? Like, I've never heard this before. And I was like, I can't even understand what he's saying. And then, years later, that ends up becoming like one of my favorite types of music, and something that I practice like singing stuff, anything along the lines of like some kind of like screamo or hardcore or whatever you want to call it. But it's just like really heavy metal like theme that you open up the game with, and I was just like, wow, it's so different. I used to like the classical music and everything else, and I just remember, you start playing it, and I was like, man, this is a really good game. Not realizing how linear the game was in a sense, but I still enjoyed it, every moment of it. I remember, you just start playing the game, and you get the all-dead language, and you really can't understand like what they're saying until you find all the translation books and go through the story. And when you replay through the game, you can actually like make out what they're actually saying because it's a made-up language that they did for the game, and I found that was really interesting as well. And it was like added this collectible element to the game, so I was really into it. And like every other Final Fantasy prior, I had to, get everything that I possibly could into the game and try to find every treasure and learn about every secret. And at that time, it was no trouble for me to get onto the internet to go and, find guides or anything like that as well for stuff that I may have missed. But the big thing that was really confusing to me is that we got Final Fantasy X, the North American release, and we never actually got like the international release with the Dark Aeons or anything like that. So it was weird, but I did end up like getting to fight those battles when I played the PSVita release or re-release of the Final Fantasy X HD remaster. So I did end up completing everything into the game, and I can remember again talking about my friend Wayne, going over to his house and just seeing him, he was on like the boat going to Luca or something, I believe, and he was just like grinding like the Sin spawn or whatever that just keeps like shooting out like enemies, and as you kill them, it just keeps shooting out more and more enemies. So he was just like repeatedly killing like the same enemy over and over and over and over and over, but he would never end a battle by actually fighting the main enemy. So he would just keep like spawning more and more and more. And I remember, like, when he ended up eventually like saying, okay, well, that's enough, like, grinding at these enemies, I'll eventually kill the boss. And then he killed the boss. I think it was like 2 or 3 days or something. He was just like grinding at the enemies. He ends up getting like so many spear levels. I think he like maxed out his spear level gauge. It was like 99 spear levels or something in one fight. And I was just like, I've never seen anybody that committed to just grinding out spear levels or any levels in anything, but I should have known better with Wayne. I do remember, like, just having that experience of like going through the spear grid, which to me was a little bit foreign because I was used to the traditional leveling system, and seeing the sphere grid and seeing how customizable it was for me, it was a little more overwhelming, and I kind of wasn't sure if I was putting the right nodes into the sphere grid, or if I was activating the right ones or removing the right ones, because I do kind of like the min-max in games, and that game had certain nodes that you had to remove in order to make sure that you had max stats on all your characters, and I never really got that in depth to it, like Wayne did, because he ended up getting all max stats or the max amount that you can get for your characters, and he did that with every sphere grid. And I was just like, man, you are way beyond committed to this game. Like I said, Final Fantasy X to me was just like, okay, this is a really good game, and I couldn't see how it was going to get any better than that. So it was a Final Fantasy that I ended up playing for countless hours, grinding it in the monster arena and trying to do all the like little side games, like the freaking godforsaken chocobo race or whatever you want to call it, where you're trying to go across the plains and get all the balloons or whatnot. Oh, that game to me was, especially when I did the HD remaster and there's a trophy or something for getting a time of 0-0. I did end up getting the trophy, but I was like, you know what? I don't think I ever want to see that mini game ever again in my life. And I never went back to it, so. But yeah, I loved how much there was to do in the game for as linear as it was. You go unlock all the celestial weapons, and like I said, just doing all the extra boss battles, like Gilgamesh or getting the Mega Sisters. It was really cool to see that throwback as well to Final Fantasy IV. But there was just so much crammed into Final Fantasy X that it was a very, very great game for its time, and the story was excellent. I know a lot of people really connected with it. My fiance in particular, that was her first Final Fantasy game, so it's something she holds near and dear to her heart. And I can't blame her. Like, it was a really, really good story. I do remember, like, when I first played the game, not being a complete fan of Titus. Keep calling him Titus. Just for as I have it, but yeah, Titus, and not really liking him because I found he was a little bit whiny, and the whole like father issues or whatever. But I stuck it through. I played the game. I got to experience the story. I got to see Yuna's journey and get to meet all the cast. Kimari and Lulu, and Waka. Everybody, Riku. Yeah, whole cast of characters, all fully voiced. NPCs and everything were awesome. I can gush about the game for hours. The soundtrack was really good as well, and not only just the Another World song, but just a lot of songs like To Xanarkin, obviously, that just everybody's favorite. But it was just a fantastic game. You get the scene with Titus and Yuna, like they're in the water, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, and you got the romance scenes into it, and I was a really big fan of like romance and the Final Fantasy games, and I really loved it, right? So there was a lot of stuff that culminated in that game to make it as great as everybody says it is, and it's a classic. And I think that Final Fantasy X is one of the games that's definitely worth going back and experiencing, and again, like Final Fantasy 7 and 9 and Final Fantasy 8 to come with the HD remaster treatment. Final Fantasy X has that as well, and you can get it on like pretty much any of the stores like digitally for a great sale price most times. Definitely recommend it to go and pick it up, try it out. experience the story for yourself. It's fantastic. And yeah, like I said, I can't gush about it enough. Final Fantasy X, awesome game. And that's my experience with it. Thank you guys for tuning in. The next one's going to be Final Fantasy XI. It's not really going to be a weird one for me. It's just Final Fantasy XI for me kind of took place at like 2 different periods of my life, so I'll talk about that in the next video anyways. It's going to be more of like a preparation for the long spiel I'm going to have in Final Fantasy XIV. But yeah, I'll try to cram everything I can into one video for Final Fantasy XI. And if you guys like my content, give it a like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Hey guys, actually before I go, I did want to talk about Final Fantasy X-2 really quick, just because I didn't really want to do a separate video for that one, just because I didn't really like play it a whole lot. I did end up beating the game when it came out. I remember like seeing the announcements for it and saying, you know, I'm gonna check it out. Just being like, okay, I don't know why they're gonna continue on Final Fantasy X, but sure, you know, whatever, I'll try it out. I remember like starting up the game, being completely thrown off because I was like, why is Yuna a pop star now? And just, you know, not really knowing what to think of it. The things I can say about the game that I actually really loved were the battle system and the fact that they added back like jobs. I wasn't really a huge fan of the dress spheres, and like Pain as a character, I know there's a lot of like fans that love her, but for me it was just kind of like a little bit of a rip-off of like Cloud, like her attitude and stuff, and well, you know, in future games like Lightning, very, very similar to me. But yeah, it was one of those things that I was kind of like, okay, like I tried it out, I beat the game. I wasn't a huge fan of the story. I didn't really like the continuation of it, and that's just my own personal opinion. I know a lot of people completely disagree with me, and that's fine. But Final Fantasy X-2 for me, one of those games that, you know, play it and alright, see you next time. That being said, I did end up, you know, picking up the HD remaster for PlayStation Vita, and I do have the game, and maybe I'll have to revisit it again and develop some new love for it or something. But yeah, that's Final Fantasy X-2 for me. Thanks again for sticking around, guys, and I'll see you next time.